with Coming to Me. It's been a while since I've been on here, but you know, it has to come to me. So basically, I wanted to talk to you all about something that I'm learning, and I just wanted to kind of give my thoughts about it. And it's really just based on self-compassion and self-forgiveness, because it's major, right? It's important that we learn how to have compassion for ourselves, especially if we want to have compassion for others, and we have to know how to forgive ourselves if we want to be able to forgive other people. And more and more I'm realizing that it genuinely starts with us. So I'm kind of thinking about making this a possible, like, maybe multi-episode type of subject, primarily because there's so much and it's so deep, and it's so, the word is more like concentrated, I guess. There's so many little idiosyncrasies when it comes to forgiveness and self-compassion, self-forgiveness and self-compassion. So I figured this episode would be really more so about not being able to, I titled it rather, Can't Give Anything That We Don't Have. And it's basically, I mean, it goes with everything, not only just forgiveness and compassion, but love and peace and kindness. You know, it's real. If we don't have it, we can't give it. And if we don't know how to give it to ourselves, really, we think we're giving it to people, but we really aren't. That's the truth. So I can start and think about a time when, like, the first time I heard the term self-compassion. Like, what is that? And back in 2018, when I separated from my ex and I moved back to Florida, trying to restart my life. While I was in New York, actually, I found a life coach online who had a lot of YouTube videos named Lisa A. Romano, who's phenomenal. Honestly, if it wasn't for her, I think I wouldn't have woken up and understood what it really meant to understood what it really meant to be codependent, and how to, like, work on that, and what aspects of things and what needs to change, you know? So anyway, she had a cruise that she was hosting with people who were members of her group. I was a new member, and it was kind of like, come on this, 6-day cruise to the Caribbean. During the day we did courses and self-care stuff, and then we did excursions, and we had, of course, ports of call, which was awesome. It was my first cruise too, so it was awesome. And it was a lot of self-help stuff that we were doing, really just working on just understanding, really inundating ourselves in person with Lisa about what codependency was, what narcissistic abuse was, what being so-called an empath is, and so forth. Just kind of like waking up, basically. And what was strange, and this is just an aside, like, I was the youngest person there, or one of the younger people there. There were a couple other young women who actually I've remained friends with, who I love. And but I was the only Black woman there. And I thought, this is prolific, this is profound, there's a reason why I'm the only Black woman here. Just because I know, like, I guess whatever was being told had to be told to someone so that I could share it with you all and have the perspective. And not only, because I don't want my audience to only be Black women, of course, it's going to be whoever, but just the perspective of a Black woman's life and her traumas and so forth is different than other people, and so is a Latina woman's, and so is a Chinese woman's, and so is, basically. But anyway, one night I was at dinner. One of our days, we were at dinner with one of the friends who I've made also, I'm friends with, named Marie. And we were at dinner, and I was going through this thing with the father of my children. And, I just was beating myself up in that moment. Really, really beating myself up. How did I do this? How did I get into this situation? He was trying to beat me up and make me feel guilty for being on this cruise and taking this moment to heal myself. And I'm sure a lot of people probably had opinions about it, but guess what? It was something that I needed to do. And she said to me, Di, but you have to have self-compassion. Have some compassion for yourself. And I'd never heard that before, you know. I didn't understand. I really did not, at that time I didn't understand, because I thought I thought compassion was externalized, right? Forgiveness was externalized. We gave people compassion. We were compassionate to other people. We forgave other people. But I didn't really understand the truth, the necessity, the level of importance that forgiving of oneself and compassion for oneself has. So anyway, I asked her, I was like, what does that mean, Marie? And she's basically said, it just means remembering that you're human, and you make mistakes, and when you're behind the veil, because that's a Lisa quote, is when you're behind the veil, you don't know, which is behind the veil, meaning like you're unconscious, you're unaware, you don't know better. And you really don't. Maybe you do, but you really don't, because you're not really understanding that a lot of our actions and the choices we make and the places we choose to go and so forth are really rooted in trauma and generational, learned dysfunctional behaviors, right? So she said that to me, and it was honestly, the whole concept was like just still foreign to me. I had no idea. First of all, I didn't believe we could give ourselves compassion, because like, you always give other people compassion. What does that mean, giving yourself compassion? Like, how do I do that? Do I just be nice to myself? Do I just, what do I do? What does that mean? And then, in all honesty, after really having years and years of negative self-talk and just beating myself up, I thought that maybe some of the things that I'd done, the choices that I'd made, were unforgivable. Maybe, it was just something that I was gonna have to live with, that I made choices, and maybe forgiveness wouldn't be mine. Maybe I couldn't, maybe it's just something I have to live with, you know what I mean? And it's something that I just have to accept about myself, that, I've done some crappy shit, and maybe I don't deserve forgiveness for certain things, right? And then honestly, I had no idea what self-compassion or self-forgiveness meant, because I just didn't have anyone around me that demonstrated it, that walked in it, that really were examples of it. And it's true, because if your mama, your daddy doesn't teach you how to have some sort of compassion for yourself and not beat yourself up, and they themselves weren't taught, and they're behind the veil, and they're, they beat themselves up, they're only gonna teach you that that's what you do, is you beat yourself up. You have guilt when it comes to things. You have remorse when it comes to spending money. You have, you beat yourself up. And if you don't have examples, or you don't have a baseline or database of what that means, to be able to pull examples so that you could implement them and walk with those things in your life, then it's pretty much difficult to emulate it, right? It's pretty difficult to emulate that. So basically, like I said before, when I first started with my intro, I just came on here basically because I wanted to just share some thoughts about the whole concept of self-compassion and self-forgiveness, and just how really vital it is, right? It's so important. Because really, like I said before, you cannot give anyone, not your children, not your loved ones, not your friends, not your coworkers, no one, not a stranger, anything that you do not embody and internalize yourself, right? And like I said, that comes with just beyond just compassion and forgiveness. It goes with just kindness and peace, and like I said, just a bunch of things that really, in all honesty, if you ain't got it, you can't give it. Your cup is empty, you can't give it to nobody, right? So that's basically it. I think we think we're doing it, but I think we ain't doing it. I think we think we're giving people compassion when we show them a level of understanding, but deep down, if you're not in a place where you're giving it to yourself, then it's not possible. So let's say that we've done something to someone we care about that's out of integrity with our own true, loving, kind nature. And as we get back into alignment, we're able to recognize the harm we may have caused, right? We want, it's like at a point we desire that person's forgiveness because we know we've wronged them. We've been out of integrity. What we did to them wasn't from a place of love. And so, we feel bad. We're remorseful. We want to be absolved of our trespass so that we can be in good standing with that person, right? We do that with God too, right? We do that where we are like, God, forgive us. Lord, forgive us for, whatever we've done. But we forget, what about with ourselves, right? How many times do you think that you've wronged yourself, right? You've rejected yourself. You've spoken death unto your life, unto yourself. You've committed a so-called sin against yourself. You've been unkind to yourself, or you've hated yourself, or you've abused yourself, abused your body, your mind, your temple. Probably more times than you probably have ever done anything that's pretty awful to anyone else. Probably to yourself first, right? And so the questions we need to ask ourselves, or the question we need to ask ourselves is why? Why do we do such things to ourselves? Why do we commit sin against ourselves, meaning ultimately just rejection of ourselves, right? Why are we so mean to ourselves? And I think it's honestly because we just see ourselves as unimportant. Because we live in a society that externalizes so many things like validation, like self-worth, like beauty, and that our inner world is secondary, right? It doesn't matter how you feel on the inside. If you are on the outside validated and told that you are such and such a beautiful